In the aftermath of UFC 290, a question echoes through the mixed martial arts world. Is Alexander Volkanovski the greatest featherweight of all time? His dominance once again leaves us in awe and prompts us to reevaluate our doubts. But where does he truly stand among the pantheon of featherweight legends? In today's video, we dive deep into one of MMA's most hotly contested debates. Who truly holds the title of the greatest featherweight of all time? In the entire history of the UFC Featherweight division, there have only ever been 4 champions: Jose Aldo, Conor McGregor, Max Holloway, and Alexander Volkanovski. These are our frontrunners, and we'll analyze their careers in depth. The case for Jose Aldo. When it comes to featherweight GOAT discussions, Jose Aldo's name naturally takes the spotlight. As the inaugural UFC Featherweight champion and the second youngest champion in Zuffa history, Aldo's impressive 9 consecutive title defenses remain unmatched. Prior to his defeat against Conor McGregor, Aldo boasted an awe-inspiring undefeated streak that spanned over a decade. Throughout his career, he showcased his dominance with victories over formidable opponents like Uriah Faber, Ricardo Lamas, the Korean Zombie, Frankie Edgar twice, and Chad Mendes twice. He was not only ahead of the game, but ahead of his time during his title run. Jose Aldo added to the vocabulary of fighting with his powerful leg kicks and building the evolution of elite strikers with elite wrestling defense. Although he may not be the best featherweight fighter of all time, having lost to all other featherweight champions, his overall longevity in the sport is what stands most impressive, defeating top contenders well past his prime. The case for Max Holloway. Then you have Holloway, who amassed an impressive 14 fight-winning streak at featherweight over the course of 5 years. Holloway was seen as the man who properly dethroned Aldo. Despite the King of Rio's loss to McGregor, the quick and sudden nature of the fight led many to believe that it was just a fluke. Many believed that if the fight had played out further, then Aldo would have done to McGregor what he did to all the others who had challenged before. Max Holloway was the first man to engage in a multiple-round fight with Aldo and beat him in a manner that left no room for speculation and talks of a fluke. Even in the subsequent rematch, the fight played out the exact same way. It was clear that Aldo was no longer at the top of the pile at featherweight. Holloway was then seen as the unbeatable king, and he laid out devastating beatdowns on his challengers. Frankie Edgar and Brian Ortega were both completely outmatched by Holloway, and he appeared to be levels ahead of the rest of the division. That's not even mentioning the absurd statistics that Holloway put out during his featherweight run and the already impressive resume that also saw him defeat the likes of Anthony Pettis, Charles Oliveira, Cub Swanson, Calvin Kattar, Yair Rodriguez, and Arnold Allen, to name a few. After losing his belt to Volkanovski, Holloway has continued to beat every single contender in the featherweight division, including the most one-sided beatdown in UFC history. Yet he simply cannot seem to figure out how to solve the Alexander Volkanovski problem. The case for Alexander Volkanovski. Alexander Volkanovski might just be the best fighter that the featherweight division has seen. Don't get too excited though. That's not to be confused with the greatest featherweight. After amassing a 7-fight winning streak upon entering the UFC, including a dominant win over Aldo in Brazil, Volkanovski got his first title shot against Holloway at UFC 245. Since picking up the title from Max, Volkanovski has gone on to defend the title 5 times, rounded out a captivating trilogy with Holloway, and secured dominant victories against Brian Ortega, the Korean Zombie, and Yair Rodriguez. His recent stretch of form, most notably since his domination of Max Holloway in their final bout, has seen Volkanovski shift up to a gear only seen in all-time greats, systematically breaking down and outsmarting elite-level talent. He has set the bar for what it means to be a well-rounded fighter. He can match any elite kickboxer, wrestler, or grappler with raw skill, athleticism, and intelligence. Not only this, but similarly to Aldo, Volkanovski has also added to the vocabulary of fighting with his footwork and style of constant feinting and rhythm disrupting, refined alongside the city kickboxing team, elevating his game to new heights. The criteria. In any analysis or ranking, we have to give the criteria for said ranking. For our purpose, what the fighter accomplished as champion of the weight class will be the criteria. I would argue that becoming a champion in MMA is one of the most difficult tasks that a fighter can engage in, second only to staying champion. Becoming a champion involves a switch from being the hunter to the hunted. Your scalp is craved by every other fighter in the division, in a manner that cannot be compared to that of a contender. Every fighter is training to beat you, and with each additional title defense, more fight film becomes available for the roster to study. This is why long-standing champions tend to have closer and closer fights as their reign goes on, as more facets of the game are broken down. It is up to the champion to stay ahead of the game. When we think of the greatest fighters of all time, regardless of weight class, we think of John Jones, Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre, and Demetrius Johnson, all of whom racked up a plethora of title defenses. If we use this as our rationality, then Jose Aldo is clearly the greatest featherweight, amassing more title fight wins and defenses than any other in history. Jose Aldo had a title reign of 1,848 days with 9 title defenses, and Volkanovski's is 1,312 days so far with 5 title defenses. No one has come close to Aldo in terms of hard numbers. Max Holloway's 924-day reign and 3 title defenses are sorely lacking in quantity to include him inside of the top 2. Although he's been undefeated in non-title fights since his losses to Alex, it's hard to count these given that they weren't title defenses. Though with every additional contender that Max Holloway defeats, Volkanovski's 3 wins over him look that much better. There's a reason why Volk advised Ilya Topuria to avoid fighting Holloway at all costs if a fight with the champion is what he wants. In regard to competition, all 3 have faced very similar problems. Perhaps the biggest difference between Aldo and the others on this list is due to the fact that Aldo was competing much earlier on in the lifespan of mixed martial arts against the pioneers of the lower weight divisions, particularly in the WAC days. Yet eventually, of course, there was quite a considerable bit of overlap in terms of opponents faced by all 3. All of these men faced the very best of their division during their time as champions, and there is not one particular individual who can be said to have taken an easy route or path to the title. In fact, all 3 individuals have fought each other, with Holloway defeating Aldo twice and Volkanovski defeating both Aldo once and Holloway thrice. It's easy to determine that Volkanovski is a better fighter than Jose Aldo. We've seen how that fight plays out in Brazil of all places. But despite their careers overlapping, these fighters are from different eras. In 2012, Alexander Volkanovski was still finishing up his pro rugby league career, whereas Jose Aldo was already 3-0 in the division. In summary, Jose Aldo undeniably boasts the most accomplished record among the contenders, dominating the featherweight division before the UFC even established it. Aldo's unprecedented 9 title defenses left a lasting impact. His breathtaking performances showcase the force of nature he was during his reign. However, greatness can be measured in various ways. And while Aldo deserves the title of the greatest featherweight ever, Alexander Volkanovski emerges as the best fighter to have competed in the featherweight division. He's the most complete featherweight we've had the honor to see compete, and his combination of tenacity, dedication, and preparation have seen him surge levels ahead of the competition. His record speaks to this, having beaten Jose Aldo convincingly and beating the fighter who finished Jose Aldo twice 3 times. We truly are seeing greatness unfold in front of us, and we're all lucky to have had the opportunity to see him compete in our time. However, Volkanovski simply hasn't done enough in the division to earn the top spot. They're both great, and greatness can take many forms. But if you find yourself arguing with someone over who is the greatest featherweight of all time, your answer is Jose Aldo. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more from the definitive channel for mixed martial arts.